I'm Nancy Thayer, originally from Royal Oak, Michigan. Studied at Michigan State University, originally in math. My bachelor's degree is in math, and I went on for a master's degree in painting, and also studied in Mexico at the Instituto Allende on an MFA program in painting.
I'm Russell Thayer. I'm from Saginaw. Graduated the University of Michigan, went to London to study at the Royal College of Art in design. Also studied in Mexico at the Instituto Allende. Came back to the U of M for a master's in sculpture.
This series of paintings is an outgrowth of a previous series, and that series an outgrowth of a previous series. And so each body of work, and that's what I would call related paintings, each body of work is the result of having finished another group of paintings and thinking about, all right, where would I like to go with from here? What have I not said that I would like to say? It usually is initiated by reaching a point in a series of paintings where I feel I've said everything I need to say with that particular format or that body of work. They are all related. This series of paintings is related very much in concept to previous works. They suggest landscape, but my work is never site-specific. It is more a matter of suggesting an atmosphere, suggesting an environment, and hopefully being able to communicate that sense of environment or that sense of mood and atmosphere to the viewer.
My pieces are a little different in that these are not a series, and they come from many years. It's not all done in the last year or this year. One of the figures was done this year, some were done 30 years ago. So there are a number of different reasons for them being. Also in my particular art, some of the pieces I do are commissions, where someone has a certain idea in mind that gives me a clue as to what direction to go in. Some of the pieces are just studio pieces that I do for myself. And those come from art history many times. There are references to Greek heroes and whatnot. Some of them also relate to cathedrals, and many of the gates have kind of a historical reference to a spiritual place, especially the entranceways, the gateways, the doorways. Some of the pieces are just for fun. Some of the little bronze figures I just do without an awful lot of thought. They're just kind of enjoyable, manipulating the materials.
Nature is certainly a prime influence and source of inspiration for me. Water, mountains. Although we are in Michigan surrounded by the Great Lakes, it's not as though I look out my living room window and see a body of water. But through our travels to Europe, to Japan, to the Yucatan, that experience with water, the experience with mountains has had a huge impact. Having said that, it is not just the physicality of the landscape that has inspired me, but more a sense of what does it bring to my experience spiritually? What do I carry away and back to my studio and to my home from having been to the ocean, been to mountains, been to various diverse and beautiful forms from nature. So the inspiration comes both from nature, but more where that experience of nature takes my thought. So again, as with Russell's work, it's more of a spiritual experience. It has to do with a private kind of response to quiet places where one can be alone with one's thoughts.
The ideas I mentioned before come from art history and from other people's art, and as Nancy referred, some of my responses to my own work. Some pieces that I've done less satisfied with, and so I correct them on another one similar to it several years later. So I'm a little more insular in that regard.
People often assume that since we are both artists, husband and wife, and both artists, that we must talk about each other's work a lot. We must have this, let's see, the benefit of having a critic in the next studio over, or someone to ask questions and run ideas by. But we really are very private about our work, about the work. So Russell does his work in his studio. I have my own studio. Now, where we do discuss our work and where it certainly benefits me is when we're talking conceptually. We're talking about the concept of being an artist, or of that sense of spirituality in a work, or what is valid, perhaps what is not, but not specifically to a particular piece. It's more in terms of issues and concepts.
The fact that we each have our own separate studio in our house says a lot. We tried sharing a studio, I remember downtown Detroit. It didn't last long. Nancy's very contemplative, sits down and thinks, looks at her pieces and thinks. My particular craft is more physical, and there's a lot of noise and grinding and dust and dirt. And noise and grinding and dust and dirt doesn't work well with meditation. So it came to the point one of us had to leave. It was me. Neither of us advertise or go out of our way to make our work known to people. So it's primarily word of mouth. You develop a reputation and a general look, and people come to you for different reasons. I do a lot of garden gates. I do railings and architectural detail, furniture. Some people who come to you for an outdoor sculpture of some kind really don't know what they want. So I do a series of drawings, just rough ideas. They pick a rough idea, and then I'll do several more drawings, and eventually get to something that they feel they want. And then I'll do a maquette, which is a small model, and there are several maquettes in the show. Maquettes are better than drawings for me because they are three-dimensional, and a lot of people have difficulty looking at a drawing and seeing it in three-dimensional. So I'm, even out of cardboard or whatever material, this is roughly what it's going to look like. The difficulty with commissions frequently is the deadlines. Many of them have very unrealistic deadlines or costs. It's more of the business. They give you a budget frequently, and so you have to make decisions based on that. The brass pieces, outrageously expensive these days. Aluminum is much more reasonable. the commissions are more the business of art, and you have contracts, and you have to satisfy the deadline and safety requirements. The big red piece, there was great concern, the one at Michigan State in front of a building. There was great concern whether emergency vehicles could get through it or pass it in fire engines and so forth to get to the door to help people. And I find that interesting. How do you solve all those problems and still wind up with something which for me is aesthetically pleasing?
These are not paintings that are candy for the eye. They're just not meant to be sweet and something like cotton candy in the mouth. They're meant to be something that has to be taken a little more patiently and more seriously, more thoughtfully. They do refer to caves, grottos, and stalactites. And I thought about how things in caves or dark places at first appear to be very black, but then the longer you're there and the more your eye becomes accustomed to the environment, the more you see forms and colors, shapes, and that's somewhat what I want the viewer to do in these, for the eye to become accustomed to looking patiently and not wanting decoration. The colors in all of these paintings are not meant to decorate. They weren't chosen to look pretty or to refer to something pretty. They're meant to engage the viewer on a more emotional basis and very much more subtle.
I think they're terrific. Oh, the little figures are a real pleasure to me. I used to do figures long ago, starting out the career, and then the commissions came and so forth, and different influences. But the figure's always kind of a favorite thing. A number of years ago, I made a small figure that I particularly liked. And the ones in this show are all variations on that one I did so many years ago. They're all within last year. And so I picked the one I had done before and made a number of small wax copies. Made some heavier, bent some over, spread the legs, tilted them, and just came up with a series of variations based on that figure. And again, I like the figure, and there's also something kind of nostalgic. It's kind of like going back to a cottage you had when you were a kid. There's something very kind of comforting. And they're just pleasurable. I think I would like the viewer who came to look at these sculptures to take away with them a sense of the variety of forms. Some are a few inches high, some are 16 feet high, and some are abstract and some are realistic. Some are curvilinear and some geometric. But I want the viewer to come away with the idea that in spite of the size and the material and the shapes and so forth, they're good works, that you can sense that there's quality of fabrication and design in them, and that good art can take many, many forms.
I've been very happy with the response of a wide range of viewers. We were here for the opening, and there were many people at the opening, many from the Detroit area, many from the Tri-County area up here. And I was able to talk to some students when we came up on another occasion. And what I'm very pleased about is so many people from backgrounds that are not art related have been able to grasp my intention, and that being creating a sense of privacy and solitude, a sense of place where one can contemplate, one can listen. Just listen to your own thoughts, listen to quietness. I had a wonderful talk with an engineer at the opening who is definitely not an art connoisseur, although he does enjoy music. He is not involved in the visual arts. And it was very rewarding to me for him to describe to me his experience in looking at the large pieces, and telling me that he just feels a sense of solitude, a sense of quiet and privacy, and a sense of being alone with his thoughts, and alone with nature, and feeling that presence of nature and what it does to the human soul. So that's really what I would like to have a viewer experience, that sense of quiet and privacy and solitude.